Well, hi there. Dinosaurs are probably the coolest things that have ever lived on this planet, other than Arthur Fonzarelli. As a kid, my biggest passion were dinosaurs. The movie Jurassic Park was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And that movie taught me about a kind of dinosaur that I had never heard of before, though it was in some of my dinosaur books. A dinosaur that became one of my absolute favorites. Velociraptor. Which I only later found out was not in the movie at all. To my knowledge, there haven't been any Velociraptors in any of the Jurassic Park or Jurassic World movies. I'll talk more about that later. But the truth is that Velociraptor and the dinosaur that they called Velociraptor in the Jurassic Park movies both belong to a group of dinosaurs called the Maniraptoran dinosaurs. And today, I want to introduce you to this group because it's a really cool group of dinosaurs and the only group of dinosaurs that didn't go extinct at the end of the Cretaceous. Unless you're talking about clades that include the Maniraptorans or that are within the Maniraptoran clade. The fact is that there are some Maniraptoran dinosaurs alive today. But before we get there, I want to spend just a moment talking about what dinosaurs are, because many people think that all ancient reptiles were dinosaurs. It's just that this is not the case. There were many ancient lineages of reptiles. In fact, all of the major lineages of reptiles alive today were present alongside the dinosaurs, as well as many more. Turtles, crocodilians, lizards, and rhynchocephalians all date back to the time of the dinosaurs. Other groups like plesiosaurs, pterosaurs, and ichthyosaurs did as well, though they're all extinct now. And there were even reptiles that predated the dinosaurs. Not to mention that there is a single dinosaur lineage that is alive still, and again, they happen to be Maniraptoran dinosaurs. So, what is a dinosaur? Dinosaurs are a distinct lineage of reptiles, as unique from the others as are crocodilians, turtles, lizards, or rhynchocephalians. They're more closely related to the crocodilians than the crocodilians are to any other group of extant reptiles. And the two of them, the crocodilians and the dinosaurs, comprise part of the Archosaurian clade of diapsid reptiles. The dinosaur clade includes animals like stegosaurs, ankylosaurs, ceratopsians, pachycephalosaurs, ornithopods, sauropods, and theropods, though the exact relationships between these groups is currently somewhat under debate. And the dinosaur clade would include these groups, their most recent common ancestors, and everything in between. They can most easily be identified by their pelvic morphology, including having their hind limbs directly under their body, as well as a host of other more subtle skeletal attributes. Ancestral dinosaurs were bipedal, walking on two limbs, but many lineages have quadrupedal members, most still having longer hind limbs than forelimbs. The Maniraptoran dinosaurs are well understood to be members of the Theropod clade. This clade includes lots of the coolest dinosaurs, such as Carnotaurus, Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, Spinosaurus, and Tyrannosaurus rex. Though the closest relatives to the Maniraptorans were the ornithomimosaurs, such as Gallimimus and Struthiomimus. One big difference between the Maniraptoran dinosaurs and most other theropods is that the Maniraptorans have very large and dexterous forelimbs. In fact, the name Maniraptora means hand thief or hand plunderer. Those hands, like those of most theropods, possessed 3 fingers, though some are lost to fusion in some lineages. They also have a large bony sternum, as well as the
half-moon-shaped bones in the wrists
that Dr. Grant was so kind to point out to us.
The pubic bone, turned backward.
And
the vertebrae, full of air sacs and hollows.
Common to the Coelosaurians, a large clade that includes the Maniraptorans.
And even the word raptor means bird of prey.
Actually, it means plunderer, but you got the rest right, Dr. Grant. And like many other theropods, most, if not all, members of this clade possessed feathers. But let's dig into this rad group of dinosaurs and figure out what exactly is in Jurassic Park, since it isn't a velociraptor, a swift plunderer. I'd like to take a moment just to say thank you to our patrons at Patreon that allow us to do awesome videos like this. Honestly, these videos take so much time for me to research and for us to produce. We don't even know if people will be interested in watching them. But because of your support, we can afford to do some experiments like this. So thank you. If you want to see us continue to make the content we're most excited to make, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The first group of Maniraptoran dinosaurs that we're going to talk about are a group that I only learned existed a few years ago. These might be some of the craziest looking of all dinosaurs. In fact, if you know a crazier one, I want to hear about it because these are crazy. And they happen to be Michelle's favorite dinosaurs. These are members of the clade Therizinosaurus. Therizinosaurus, the genus for which the clade is named, means reaper or sickle lizard. Kind of a crazy name, right up until you see the claws they have on their front limbs. Though these appear to be intimidating weapons of death, as are sickles generally, their function was likely more related to stripping leaves from trees, like those of ground sloths. Therizinosaurs appeared to have been herbivores. Members of this clade ranged in size from about 7 feet to over 30 feet, just over 2 to about 10 meters, and have been found in the Cretaceous deposits in North America and Asia. The next group is a bit difficult to place within the Maniraptora. These are the Alvarezsauria. It is pretty clear that they're Maniraptoran dinosaurs, but where did they go? Some phylogenies depict them as sharing a more recent common ancestor with the other Maniraptoran dinosaurs than the Therizinosaurs, some a more recent ancestor. In the past, they were thought to be very closely related to the only living clade of dinosaurs, the avialans, because they have a keeled sternum and fused hand and wrist bones, like birds. But as we've found more members of the group, it appears that these similarities were derived independently, so placing them has been tricky. But generally, these are fairly small, just over a foot to maybe a little over 6 feet, or about half a meter to about 2 meters in total length. They've been found mostly in Asia and South America, but also in North America and Europe, and appear to have existed from the late Jurassic until the end of the Cretaceous. As we mentioned earlier, they have a lot of fusion in their wrist and hand. This usually took the form of one big finger and 2 tiny little fingers. However, unlike birds, it looks like they use these huge fingers and strong bony reinforcement to dig and not to fly. Looking at their long jaws and small teeth, it's pretty likely that they were digging for insects on which they fed, possibly in termite mounds. The next group is almost certainly more closely related to the other Maniraptoran dinosaurs than either the Alvarezsauria or the Therizinosaurus, and those are the Oviraptorosauria. I can remember well seeing these oddballs in my dinosaur books as a kid. These guys had short, crazy-looking beaked faces, often with crests, like a tortoise had a baby with a cassowary. Being partially feathered Maniraptorans didn't really change that either. That's a weird face. These guys ranged from about 3 feet to over 25 feet long, or about 1 to 8 meters, with most being around 2 meters in length. So what do you eat with a tortawary face? It seems that we have no idea. Hypotheses range from being carnivores to herbivores. Maybe they just ate mollusks. And despite being named oviraptors, egg plunderers, there is little evidence today that they fed on eggs. And they're found in Cretaceous deposits in North America and Asia. And that brings us to the group most closely related to the only surviving dinosaur lineage, the birds. This group would be the Paraves, meaning alongside the birds, although it includes more than just the neighbors of birds, but the birds as well. This is the group that contains Velociraptor, as well as whatever it was that they were calling Velociraptor in Jurassic Park and all of its sequels. This group is composed primarily of carnivores, but also some herbivores, omnivores, and animals that eat specific types of animals such as insectivores. Though most theropods walk on 3 toes, some members of this group walked on only 2 toes, with the third held off the ground and sporting a huge claw that was likely used, as Dr. Grant so eloquently explained.
And he slashes at you with this 6-inch retractable claw, like a razor, on the middle toe. He doesn't bother to bite your jugular like a lion, say. No. He slashes at you here, or here, or maybe across the belly, spilling your intestines. The point is, you are alive when they start to eat you. So, Try to show a little respect.
Okay.
This group seems to have originated in the Jurassic, though, like most of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, most of them were found in the Cretaceous. So it should have been Cretaceous Park, and the Velociraptors weren't really Velociraptors, and raptor means plunderer. Oh well. So let's dig into this group and find out what the Velociraptors really were and what other cool dinosaurs are in this group. The first group that we'll discuss within the Paraves are the Scansoriopterigidae, which means climbing wings. Try to guess what they have. These guys lived in the Jurassic in what today is China, and were basically the flying squirrels of their day. They were even about the size of flying squirrels, and these are the first members of this group to be found with adaptations for an arboreal and somewhat flighted lifestyle. And that gets us to the Maniraptora, the true hand plunderers, and my personal favorite group of Maniraptorans. Truly. This group includes the Dromaeosaurids, the Troodontids, and the Avialans. There is some disagreement about which of these groups is most closely related to the Troodontids, the Dromaeosaurids or the Avialans. So I will just talk about the Dromaeosaurids first and the Troodontids in the middle, so they will be next to their closest relatives, whoever those turn out to be. The Dromaeosaurids are the group we are the most excited to discuss anyway, because Velociraptor and the bigger, badder Maniraptoran from Jurassic Park are both in this group. You see, Velociraptor, which comes from Mongolia and Inner Mongolia at the end of the Cretaceous, was a formidable creature. This is its skull, and this is its claw. You wouldn't want to fight this thing. It was around 2 meters long and half a meter tall, or about 6 feet long and less than 2 feet tall, and probably weighed about 15 kilograms, or a bit over 30 pounds. It would be worse to fight than Gus Gus. Heck, it would be worse to fight than a Nile monitor. But it's not going to kill you. Even if you're a kid trapped in a kitchen against two of them with your sister who prefers to be called a hacker, but we all know is a nerd. But this dinosaur, the species that they were actually facing in the kitchen, would totally kill you. A Dromaeosaurid almost twice the length of Velociraptor and weighing somewhere between 160 and 220 pounds, or 73 to 100 kilos. And you'll notice that the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are not only the wrong size, but their head shape is completely different as well. And that is because they're not simply overgrown velociraptors, swift plunderer, but rather Deinonychus, whose name Michael Crichton, the author of Jurassic Park, thought didn't sound as cool, but that means terrible claw. And as unpleasant as this little velociraptor claw would be, the claw that Dr. Grant carried with him was considerably more terrible for sure. This skull from Deinonychus actually comes to me from Aldo from Dark Science Reptiles, and he's got a really excellent YouTube channel and Instagram page, and so we'll have links to those down in the description. But this is a 3D printed Deinonychus skull, and this shows off really nicely the difference in shape between the Velociraptor skull and the Deinonychus skull. And the Velociraptor skull being much more concave, the Deinonychus skull being much more convex. But, likely due to limitations in the size of a 3D printer, this skull is not the full size for a Deinonychus skull. And this would be a particularly large Velociraptor skull. This one's coming in at close to about 9.5 inches, which is about as big as those would ever get. This is a 10-inch Deinonychus skull, which would just be a juvenile, because as adults, this skull would be 16 inches long, just like the skulls that were used to build the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park. And both Michael Crichton and Steven Spielberg, the director of the movie, were careful to depict Deinonychus as accurately as they could. Though today we understand that these dinosaurs were likely feathered and held their hands differently, a friend of mine, Dr. Paul Bybee, was even consulted to find out if Deinonychus could have opened doors. Upon finding out that their forelimb morphology would not allow them to turn a doorknob, handle-style doorknobs were installed on the doors at Jurassic Park. Oops. In retrospect, they should have installed regular doorknobs as well as locking mechanisms on the vehicle doors, and they probably shouldn't have hired Dennis Nedry. But they really were very careful to get Deinonychus right. They are even digging in the Badlands of North America for their Velociraptor. This is where Deinonychus is found. It is, interestingly enough, not anywhere close to Mongolia, where Velociraptor comes from. And while I have heard people say that they think the Velociraptors in Jurassic Park were Utah Raptors, Utah Raptor was much bigger still than the dinosaurs in the movie. 23 feet, 7 meters, and 1,500 pounds, almost 700 kilos. Deinonychus is not only the right size, found in the right place, but also has the right head shape. So why does it have the wrong name? That is the fault of paleo artist Gregory S. Paul and his book, Predatory Dinosaurs of the World. In this book, Gregory Paul determined that Velociraptor from Mongolia and Deinonychus from North America were sufficiently similar that they should be classified as being parts of the same genus. And since Velociraptor was the earlier genus known to science, that genus should be Velociraptor. Thus he concluded that Deinonychus was a species of Velociraptor. This idea never gained much footing in the scientific community, but it did with Michael Crichton, who referenced Paul's work in the acknowledgments to Jurassic Park. So there isn't much support for the idea that Deinonychus is a Velociraptor, but they're both related. They're both Dromaeosaurids, running lizards. Though just to be clear, no dinosaurs are actually lizards. Dromaeosaurids have been found on every continent except Australia, but teeth have been found there as well, so they were probably found all over the globe. And they appear in the Jurassic, but were most prevalent in the Cretaceous. Overall, you're probably pretty familiar with their body plan. They were bipedal, with big, sickle-shaped claws on their interior toe. Unlike what is depicted in Jurassic Park, it now appears that they were heavily feathered. In some, like Microraptor, they were likely capable of powered flight. And their eyes pointed somewhat forward, so they probably had better binocular vision and depth perception than most dinosaurs. However, their close relatives, the Troodontids, may have had even better binocular vision. Members of the family Troodontidae were found at the same time and in many of the same locations as their dromaeosaurid relatives, also looked fairly similar to the dromaeosaurids, except their toe claw was not as heavily curved. They also seem to have preyed on smaller prey than dromaeosaurids, and as a result were more lightly built with small, closely spaced teeth on their bottom jaws. In addition to having great binocular vision, they also had very large brains for dinosaurs of their size. Only the Aviale had bigger brains. And Aviale is an amazing clade to end with because members of this clade are still alive today, though certainly not all. Aviale means birdwing, so try to guess what this clade has. Though not all of them necessarily do. Though it is often defined as all dinosaurs, including modern birds, more closely related to modern birds than to Deinonychus, in which case it would likely include the Troodontids. This clade likely includes dinosaurs, such as Archaeopteryx, unless it is actually a dromaeosaurid, and the enantiornithines, also known as the opposite birds. Opposite because they seem to be a convergence on the bird body form. And their wing-shoulder morphology is opposite to that of birds. Socket and ball instead of ball and socket. Also, like many other primitive birds, they had teeth and claws on their wings, though clawed wings are still seen on juvenile Watsons. That thing is a dinosaur for sure. And it also includes the birds, the only living dinosaurs. And that is a decent introduction into the Maniraptoran dinosaurs. What group should we cover next? As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. Dinosaurs are probably the coolest things that have ever lived on this planet. You know, other than Arthur Fonzarelli.
Who the heck? Do you think the Troodontids were so intelligent they created civilization, and then when they were warring, they went into space and sent an asteroid down to wipe out their enemies, and then just wiped everyone out instead?
I would say that
Yes!
there's no evidence that disproves that particular hypothesis. You know, can you imagine if I'm just like, Therizinosauridae. Just right in the middle of the video.
I want to know where the Womaniraptorian is. That's sexist.
Wow.
Womaniraptorian?
Okay.
The woman plunderer? They're getting to a point now where it's not a matter so much of whether or not they could, but whether they should. And
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.